What's up, brothers and sisters? It's your brother G World 7_D. Give you a quick video out here. I want to tell you some methods that you can use while you do your research and study your history. When you're doing your research, like I said, you can't just Google information, so you got to get more in depth. I mentioned before you should get a library card, which is good. Go to your local library, go to their online system, and try to find books that deal with a particular subject matter that you're interested in. And sometimes you may get information from something that you really wasn't looking for, but it'll come up to you. Also, try those main branch libraries. Like here in Chicago, we have one called Carter G. Woodson, which is on the south side of Chicago, on 95th and Halsted. And that's one of those main branch libraries. It has more information there than just the regular branch library. All right, it has more detailed information that you can get. It's sort of like the downtown version one, but they have one like on the west side, the south side, and the north side. But those libraries have good information that you can pull up. Then there's an online library or journals you can try to pull off information off a PDF, whatever. So you can try to pull off stuff from there. Also, when you do your research, be wary of how a lot of these white scholars write things and Negroes who follow them. Any type of person who they see as black, they would describe them as African. And they try to make African out as a race when African isn't a race. All right, Europe isn't a race because the original so-called Europeans were Negroes. All right, but then they try to tell you, like one idiot try to come on page, say, oh, they were just Africans. They weren't, quote, Europeans, which they were Europeans. The original so-called Europeans were so-called black people. You see, this is the trick. When you keep using the term African, you're limiting melanated people who have certain features, certain various features, to one part of the globe. When actually so-called melanated people, if you just want to do your study or look, and many know this, we're all over the planet. When you study North America and Europe, you realize how whites and others stole their identity. In North Africa, you see these people call themselves Arabs. They're really of mixed Turkish descent, and they stole their identity from the original black Arabs. They stole their identity, and this was done to the black people here in America. All right, the Aboriginal American Indian identity was stolen by whites and pale people coming from Asia, Siberian Asians. And remember, they were originally adopted into the black tribes. A lot of those people were, quote, slaves of the black people who were ruling here. They were servants of the black people who were ruling here. And many of the black people adopted them and taught them a way of life. So, and then later on, many of them black people were pushed out of those damn tribes or nations by the whites and the so-called Asians. I mentioned this other video, my older videos, which I talked about how they got together to push a lot of the black folks out, fighting against the black people who ruled here, along some sellout Negroes. All right. A lot of these tribal names that we see today have been changed by Europeans. But let's get something straight. Apologize for that, excuse me. Let's get something straight. Is that the original people all through the Americas were so-called Negroes. Now, I showed you from that one book I had some of the illustrations on how they were perceived and how they looked and their way of life, what they were doing, and how they build. You obviously seen those are, quote, melanated so-called black people. Unfortunately, you have too many of your Negro scholars, and I've said this on other videos, want to look at everything from a, quote, African scope. And they want to Africanize everything that they see as black or of melanated Negro component globally. And so you start getting confusion with that. And then they only take certain type of features and say, oh, those are Negroes, and the Negroes and the Asians and then the whites. When all those are so-called Negro black people, all right? But what the white scholars have done and what Negro scholars have followed is just exaggerating certain features, phenotypical features, and made them just, quote, true Negro features, while the other people who are so-called Negro, who would have been sitting in the back of the bus, have been relabeled as white, and they were just as black as other people. They have done many different tricks, strategized our history, and lied. All right. I talked about the Mansa Abu Bakr Muhammad II, the older, I won't say the older half-brother of Mansa Musa. Let me get that right, the older half-brother. But how they brought a lot of culture ideas here, but mound building was already being done. Right? I mentioned before how the campus of Louisiana State University, you find a bunch of mounds, and many of them older than the pyramids of Giza. Why is that? Because our ancient ancestors were already here in America building great civilizations. We didn't really come over here on a slave ship. So we gotta understand the original so-called Indians, not no Native Americans. The original so-called Indians and those tribes were Negroes. But just like in Europe with the black Celts, black people in Scotland, Britain, Ireland, those names originally were of Negroes. So when you look at those Irish names, they're originally of black Irish individuals, black Europeans. But their identity was stolen, and many of them were brought here to the Americas. Not only what you call eventually the so-called 13 colonies, but yet some end up in freaking Tennessee. so I'm just letting you know that when you do your study, you gotta understand the tricks that these white folks will do, how they created what they're trying to create, or the mass confusion that they give you when you do your research. Because these people try to find a way to write themselves in history that they had nothing to do with. And unfortunately, some of my people, they want to continue to be African slaves. When the majority of us are not what you call African. And African is not a race. We've been here. And it's sad, that some of our people are learning, and then now that more and more people are starting to learn, then there's obviously the mainstream Negroes are trying to cut that off. Because they know the game or their message is outdated, and people are not want to hear that message. People are going beyond what they're telling them to get them surface level information. We don't need surface level information. We need in-depth information. That's why I give you a lot of the sources I give you. And I try to tell you many different tricks that they say, many different phrases they say. So you get these goofy white boys like Metatron, who just said they're out not loud trying to say the Egyptians were Negro, trying to make them see that they were white or mythical Mediterranean race. This is the different tricks that these bastards use to try to hijack your history. And this is something we're going to have to understand, is that these individuals will never come out openly and tell you who the original people were or are. They want you to be a slave from Africa, from sub-Saharan Africa, that all these black folks here in America come from West Africa. I mentioned before how people migrated back and forth, traded, and then took in wives from different places. It was always a constant migration, man. Our people weren't situated in one location. I've said this over and over again. I'm going to continue to say this. This is why it's so important for us to gather this information and then groom our youth and to learn their true history. Because when you listen to people like Henry Louis Gates, those individuals, man, Mike Eric Dyson, and that 1619 Project, that's total garbage. That's that bootleg Negro talk, man. And they give you fake information. We were here before the 17th century. We were here before the 16th century. All right? We were way here before, was it 1526 or 29, these Negroes talking about. Man, we was here way before that. We built great civilizations here. This is our land, man. Don't let nobody tell you that you're some damn African and call Africa a race. It's not a race. White scholars have done that. So the Aboriginal, Black, Asians in Asia, who the original people there, were they just African? While the other people are Asian? So you're making a quote. You said that the original Black people there are foreigners, but the Asians there are indigenous to the land. Come on, man. That stuff don't make any sense when you start peeling the layers of that crap. That term African is basically to take you away from your true lineage and from who you truly are here in the Americas, man. You're not an African, period. Now, like I said, there's always been connections between various different brothers and sisters and different land masses. But to just sit there and say that we're just African and we're a race of Africans, that's nonsense. You fall into the traps, a lot of these white racist historians and the different tricks that they use to write melanated people out of the history of different regions. Like I said before, I don't like when people say those black people rule Europe as, quote, Africans, when the so-called Negroes been there. You got to understand, that is one of the tricks that they're doing to write you out. Is to make you just be one central location instead of you being all over the planet, which you were. That's why you look at a lot of those images of the black rulers in Egypt, over in Europe, when they're holding that round ball, it's the image of their rulership of the world. They knew the freaking world is more round than flat. A lot of people been through that, man. But when you continue to listen to ignorant Negroes and ignorant white folks, you're going to continue to get this mess, man. So I want you to gather up and get this information. Take this information. Take it for your best knowledge and grow. All right? Continue to grow when you do your research, man. You got to basically take everything like a fine-tuned comb and go right through it. Because you're not going to get the information straight in your face from most of these white scholars, even from these Negroes, because they want to make everything African. All right? So that's my quick message for the day. Research techniques, man. That can be helpful when you go out and do your research. I hope that's been somewhat helpful. But I'll probably give you some more tips on what you can do. So I'm going to go do that because we need this information because we've been bombarded by white folks and others and Negroes on giving us misinformation, claiming that we're African, which we're not. All right, peace and love.